Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, it's now 3 o'clock. What's up, my friends? Chad here. One of the biggest games in Pac-12 history in their conference finale tonight. Oregon and Washington from Allegiant Stadium down in Las Vegas. Oregon favored by 9.5. Dan Lanning on the idea that Michael Penix is not the same quarterback since the two teams played back in October.
Still won every single game, and maybe he hasn't had some of the stats that he's had early in the season, but he's obviously a really talented quarterback, a really good quarterback. It's late in the season, everybody gets a little bit banged up. But to me, he's still playing really elite football.
Yeah, kickoffs at 5 on ABC. Dwight Jaynes going to join us live from Vegas at 4:20. Justin Myers will talk Ducks at 5. SEC title game critical for the college football playoff. Georgia and Bama tomorrow at 1 on CBS. From Atlanta, both teams undefeated in SEC play. The Seahawks fall in Dallas last night, 38-35. The Hawks are 6-6, currently 7th in the NFC playoff standings. They're at San Francisco next Sunday. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad starts right now.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad, presented by Lazy Boy. What is your strategy for comfort?
Bounce it to Henderson, who will take it up. Now to 5 on the corner for 3. Got it! Blazers lead, 86-83. Here's Henderson with the drive, slips through, kicks to the corner. Reith open 3. Got it! Swap Reith from downtown. Blazers lead by 12.
Second and goal from the 7. Throw over the middle. It's Brandon Cooks. He was wide open. Beat Bobby Wagner to the spot, and Dak Prescott found him at the goal line for 6.
Dak Prescott's the best Pied Piper for everybody. He is the Pied Piper of the team.
Yeah, we're all waiting to see, is it a call? That's what we're waiting for. See, did the official make a call here? Oh, he didn't call it. Oh, he did call it. Can't call everything when there's a little this is in the that.
Can't take it anymore, Godfather.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad starts now.
Well, it's a football Friday when Michael Shacker breaks out the White Snake. I'm going to be honest with you. It's been a long time since I've been this twisted up on a football game. A couple of weeks ago, I was convinced the Ducks would likely win the rematch, but now that I've kind of dug through the numbers, analyzed the insane point spread, I have no idea what's going to happen tonight. One thing I'm certain of, the Ducks are not going to cover the spread. If Oregon wins, it will not be in a blowout. Now, I think we have to give both teams some credit for a moment. I know that's hard for each fan base to do, but Oregon did exactly what I said they would need to do and needed to do before the season began to put themselves in this exact position. You split the two road games with Washington and Utah, and then make sure you go out and handle the rest of your business. And not only have the Ducks handled their business against the lesser teams, aside from that close call against Texas Tech, they've dominated competition, and they've looked great in doing so. And I think their dominance against those lesser teams is part of why the spread has gotten out of hand. Oregon's been on fire, and Washington, while winning games, has struggled down the stretch. Oregon has dominated. They have great balance on offense. They can run the ball at will. Bucky Irving is a sensational player. And with Bo Nix and their playmakers, they can drop back and throw it to win if needed. We saw that against USC. They have the ability to beat you in every which way. And I love football teams like that are like, okay, you're going to jam the box, we're going to throw over the top. You're going to lighten the box and drop guys in coverage, we'll kill you with the run. I think even more impressive has been the defense. The Ducks right now are 15th in the nation in total defense, 12th in turnover ratio, 48th in passing yards allowed, and right now 7th in the nation in rushing defense. It's like, whose Oregon Ducks are these guys? This is a stronger and more sturdy Ducks team than we've seen in the past. They are more talented at the line of scrimmage. And when you build a team from the inside out, this is what you get. More of an SEC-type team than a Pac-12 team. And that's important. We are seeing the Ducks play Dan Lanning football. And the team is starting to take more of a shape in terms of what he knows and really what he's looking for. And I applaud him for the work he's done in a very short period of time. It's very impressive. Now, if we can just get him to work on some of the fourth down decision making, he'd be great. And of course, you got Bo Nix, who came over from the SEC. Tonight, this is hard to believe. Tonight against Washington in the Pac-12 title game will be his 60th start. 60! How old is this guy? His experience, his demeanor, he's an extension of the coaching staff on the field, great poise. He's everything you want in a leader. And if you talk to him, and I remember speaking with him down at Pac-12 Media Day in Vegas, when you have a conversation with him, you're like, do you have a pulse? Hey, Bo, can you just slide your wrist across the table? I need to check and see if you have a pulse. So great poise, great leader. The younger guys on the team definitely looking to him because he sets the pace. First one to show up, last one to leave. More importantly, he can make all the throws. Mobile, and you can see it, right? He processes at a high level at the line of scrimmage. Now, both quarterbacks very similar from the standpoint that they had issues at their previous schools. Auburn was very happy to move on from Bo Nix, but that's Auburn. And Indiana, both found coaching staffs that believed in them in the portal, gave them a new opportunity, and now both have cashed in and upgraded their NFL draft stock. I really don't think either Guy Penix or Nix could ask for more. Now, when it comes to Washington, I admire their toughness. This team hasn't lost a game since October 8th of last year. A 45-38 loss to Arizona State. I was at that game. Since then, the Huskies have ripped off not one, not two, but 19 straight wins, including 2 against the Oregon Ducks. And I think a lot of times there's too much attention paid to how a team wins in college football instead of the fact that they just win, or you have a team that just finds ways to win games. And the reason why that's impressive is because most games are lost, right? Most teams lose games because they make too many mistakes, or their coach makes bad decisions, or they have a bunch of dum-dums that turn the football over. I think we should applaud teams for knowing how to win games and coming up big when it matters most. And that's what Washington does. They make plays in the clutch. They have a very good coaching staff. Kalen DeBoer, I don't know if the guy can recruit. We'll find out long term, but I know he can coach. That guy's a tough SOB on the sideline. Good coach. The team plays with confidence, and in the fourth quarter, because it happens all the time, they now believe they're going to make things happen on both sides of the ball. And like Nix, Penix, plenty of experience. He's a big-time player. He can make all the throws. He shows his toughness with a willingness to stand in the pocket, deliver the football when he knows he's going to get crunched. Very accurate and very smart. I mean, you're not going to do a lot in this game tonight to fool one of those quarterbacks because they've seen it all. And now, of course, the real, I would say, X factor for Washington, it's the receiving core, right? Now, you Duck fans think that they push and get away with a lot. They probably do. But they're led by Romeo Dunze. Polk is back. Very physical, one of the best receiving cores in the country. And Penix is smart. He has no issue throwing it up and giving his guys a chance to make a play. And you got to give props to their offensive line. Do you know how many times Penix has been sacked this year? 8. They're great in pass protection. The Huskies right now have 4 wins over teams that are 8-4 or better on the season. They've got the wins. They're undefeated. They've got the resume, even if they've had some close calls. Now, I do have 2 concerns for the Huskies going into the game tonight. Number one, is Michael Penix healthy? I don't think so. And if he's not, that's sure they're not going to say anything. They're not going to announce, Penix, his ribs are a little bit, sore right now. They're not going to say that. They'll say something like he's under the weather. I just thought he acted really odd at the end of the WSU game. Did you see that? He looked like he was hurting, and then it was like, well, I just couldn't really watch the field goal. Okay. Is that the story you're going with? So I'm just wondering if there's a rib injury or if he re-aggravated the injury Saturday that I think he may have initially heard against Oregon in October. I mean, if he's not right, obviously it's a big advantage for Oregon. Also, I'm starting to wonder if the 19 straight wins is starting to take a toll on the team. They look tired at the end of the season. like a team that's been carrying the pressure of trying to navigate the gauntlet. They're the first team since Oregon in 2010 to go undefeated in conference, have an undefeated season. And you know this, it's hard to do. Now, here's the one talking point that I think is rubbish. And I'm sure you've heard it. You've probably talked about it with your boys. In fact, some of you have probably said the same thing to your boys this week as you're hanging out around the, company microwave or water cooler. You don't have to admit to this, but I want to know if you have heard this or have said it to your boys. It's really hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. How many of you have heard that this week? How many of you have said that to someone this week? I don't know, man. It's really hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. Well, that's just not true. In fact, this stat's wild to me. Teams that rematch in the conference title game, the team that won the first game is 7-1 in the conference title game rematch. 7-1. And I think the only game to go against that stat was Oregon in their rematch with Arizona back in 2014. So just keep that in mind. You can beat the same team twice. In fact, it happens all the time. And we saw the same thing last year when Utah dropped the hammer on USC. That was satisfying. In the title game after beating them by a single point earlier in the season. Maybe the Huskies will be more relaxed and have fresher legs now that the grind of their undefeated season is over. And one thing for certain, legacies are going to be made in this game and potentially a Heisman Trophy won or lost. And for Dan Lanning, critical. A win and his team might be playoff bound in year number 2. A loss and Lanning will be 1-4 against his rivals and 0-3 against Washington. You don't want that on your resume. For the Huskies, a loss tonight would, in their perfect season, it would basically mean all their work was for naught because they're going to be left out of the playoff. And they can talk about how it doesn't really matter. All the work's already been done. It sucks. If they lose tonight, they're done. They're not going to the playoff, and no one's going to give a rip about the Fiesta Bowl. No one. You can pretend like it matters, but it doesn't matter. That's what makes this game so great. Oh, and by the way, it's also probably the biggest game the conference has ever seen. The stakes couldn't be higher. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Let's go out to Daniel, who is from North Phoenix, but he's in Vegas right now, decked out in his Oregon Duck green tracksuit, getting all jacked up for the game. Daniel, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, Chad, what's going on, man? I'm ready to go.
Where are you at right now?
I am currently at the MGM, just chilling in the hotel room, getting ready for the game. I'm not gripping. I'm called a show to give you my take. The Ducks are going to win. They're going to win 44-34. They're going to cover that 10-point spread, and they're going to put that dog to sleep. They got to put it to sleep, or they're going to put it back in the kennel. Michael Penix is hurt. This is our year, Chad. Go Ducks.
All right, you have yourself a fine evening. Are you flying back to Phoenix tonight, or are you going to stay the night in Vegas?
I'll be back in Phoenix tomorrow morning at 6 a.m.
Excellent, my brother.
Just a one-night thing. I'm excited. I'm excited to go see Bo Nix. The Ducks are winning the game. I am not gripping. And, you're going to be owing me a jersey after tonight, bro. You're the one that's gripping right now.
That's right. And what's really crappy is that you're going to make me buy you a C.J. Stroud jersey if the Ducks win, and that's who the Broncos are playing this weekend.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait.
You got to do me one favor, though. When you get to the stadium, go find the Godfather and slap him on his bald-ass head for me. Can you do that?
I don't know if I'll do that, but if I told him if I do see him, I will be purchasing him a 24-ounce Diet Coke courtesy of Allegiant Stadium. So hopefully I do run into him.
All right. Hey, they got refills there. Free refills when you buy a cup. They got the little Coke machines bumping around. It's nice.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it. All right, Chad. Go Ducks!
All right, dude. There's Daniel. He made the trip up. What's irritating is that I think he paid $150 for a plane ticket from Phoenix. The airlines are not being so kind to people in Portland and Seattle where I checked it, and I think it was like round trip. I think it was Southwest. It was like $700, between $7 and $8. That's nonsense, especially when you know what a normal ticket to Vegas costs. Strokage, that's what they're doing. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Here's what's coming up on the show. Alex Brink, our college football and NFL insiders, up next. Dwight live from Allegiant Stadium at 4:20. And we'll check in with the Ginger, Justin Myers, at 5. Hopefully he won't be too deep into his happy hours so he can talk football. Rip City Radio is looking for photos of your children with Santa, not the
You're listening to the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, it's a great day to talk to this guy. Here's our college football and NFL insider from E4 Sports, former Cougar. It's Alex Brink, who's back on the show. Alex, what's up, buddy?
What is going on, Chad? How we doing?
Oh, fabulous. I'm excited to have you on the show, and there's so many great things to talk about. We'll get to the Pac-12 title game in just a moment, but first off, what was your reaction to Jonathan Smith leaving for Michigan State?
Oh, I can't say I was too surprised. I mean, I think when that job opened up, Coach Smith seemed like probably a really solid candidate for it, and clearly he was willing to throw his name in the hat.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised either, especially with the conference dissolving. I guess my question for you would be do you think Jonathan Smith would be leaving for Michigan State now if the Pac-12 still had a conference and a viable TV deal?
I do. I mean, the vibe I got from Jonathan, and as it played out clearly in this whole process, is that, this isn't really about, it's not really about Oregon State's situation or his history with Oregon State. I mean, I think he very candidly wants to coach at the highest level possible for the biggest programs possible and prove that he can do that, right? And as hard as that maybe is to hear for Beaver alums, I just don't. I think Jonathan Smith, and this is kind of a fallacy of many college football coaches, and the egos kind of run ahead of you, and maybe you don't think critically all the time, and so you end up in situations that probably pay more, maybe have some more perks, but are not necessarily better fits for you. And I think there's a real solid chance that Jonathan ended up in a situation like that.
How challenging do you think that job will be for him? Michigan State, no question, a better program than Oregon State. But, of course, in the new Big Ten, you're going up against, programs like Ohio State, Michigan, and now Oregon and Washington.
Yeah, I think it's all relative, frankly. I don't know that I would sit here and say that Michigan State is a better program than Oregon State. It's certainly better funded, and it's in a conference. So those things are obvious positives. But, look, I mean, the Big Ten is built so that Michigan and Ohio State can battle to win that thing every year, right? Like, that is what it's all about. Oregon and Washington are going to find out the same thing. Same with USC and UCLA. Like, that, make no mistake, the Big Ten is about two schools. That's Michigan and Ohio State. And Michigan State will always be runner-up to that. It's a fabulously well-funded program. I mean, multiple billionaire alumni that donate to the program, and they still can't get over the hump, right? And so I think it's going to be a tremendously difficult job for Jonathan. I think him not having roots in that area recruiting-wise, and him not understanding maybe the landscape of it, is going to be a real challenge. And frankly, I think, I don't know that he has the resume and the name to withstand some mediocre years when when a program has high expectations, a la Nebraska and Mike Riley.
All right, Alex Brink is here on the Rip City Drive. Cam Ward has entered the transfer portal. Matt Rule said this week that a good transfer QB will cost you somewhere between $1 to $2 million. Are you surprised that he's looking to leave?
Boy, I tell you what, I missed the boat by 15 or 16 years, Chad. I would have been.
I want to know what Alex Brink in the portal would have meant. That's what I want to know.
It's in the high twos, I got to think, based on what I'm hearing. No, I mean, in all seriousness, good for Cam Ward, good for any quarterback that's out there getting $1 million or more, or a package of $1 million or more, however you want to look at it. To go play football in college, that's fantastic. I'm excited for them. I think that's great. I think whoever's paying that money or those services for them is a little foolish, but that's the world we live in. And so, I think in the end, I think the number's right. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, a number of starting quarterbacks this year are getting paid at or around that number. And, when I heard Cam Ward's name get floated, it makes sense. He's got a year of eligibility left. He's obviously got starting experience, and there's teams, on the West Coast that need starters. There's teams across the country that need starters, and he would be foolish not to look into it.
What school do you think would be a good fit for him?
Oh, boy. I mean, He's from Texas, so it would be intriguing, right, if he goes back maybe to a school like Texas A&M. I could see that being a place for him. Maybe just generally going back down south. Look, if Oregon wants him and he's got the opportunity to go there, why would you not play for Will Stein and play under Dan Lanning and get into that program? As hard as that would be for me to watch, that would be really difficult. But those are two really good landing spots.
Do you have any more years of eligibility left? I think you should just go jump in the portal right now.
I don't know. These days, who knows, right? Like,
you might.
I get a COVID year, don't I? Like, I experienced COVID. Do I get a COVID year? Like, I feel like I'll just throw my name out there and see what happens. I'll let somebody else's compliance figure it out.
No, I love it. It's Alex Brink here on the Rip City Drive. All right, you were on the call for the game last week. Washington very fortunate to get the win. What's going on with Michael Penix? Why, in your mind, have they fallen off and not been the same since their win over Oregon in October?
Well, you think about that win against Oregon in October, and we talked about it back then. It definitely kind of slid by to some degree. The Oregon had that game, in hand if they make a couple different decisions on fourth down. And the reality of Washington and Michael Penix and Rome Odunze is that if they have the ball last, they're probably going to beat you, in a one-score game. That's just the reality of it. But, in the entire Pac-12 schedule or slate, other than Cal, they were in 10-point or less ball games, right? They were scraped by Arizona State on a pick six. Stanford had a chance on a fourth down to go down and tie it. There's been a lot of instances where Washington has won the game, which is what matters most, but certainly has shown some flaws. And I think a little bit with Michael Penix that I've noticed, at least against Washington State, was, when you make the pocket around him muddy, he gets uncomfortable and he can't step into throws and he's not nearly as accurate. If he works off play action pass and has a great pocket, he is going to absolutely put the ball on his receiver's face mask all day. But the real star of that team is Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze is the best player on the football field, I believe, night in and night out. And so if you always have that guy as a quarterback, you're guaranteed to get an opportunity to throw touchdowns and throw completions because he's just so good. And that's what you saw against Washington State. He was the difference in the ballgame. Rome Odunze running the football, catching the ball. It doesn't matter. I believe that as Odunze goes, the Washington Huskies go. But the key is Penix has to be able to deliver the ball to him. And if you really make that pocket tight, he's not nearly as consistent.
How would you like to throw to a guy like Odunze?
Oh, my goodness. And look, and Troy Franklin's a really nice player too, for Oregon, and has a lot of tools about him also. And I think, they're relatively comparable. But Odunze's ability to adjust to the football and his body control is just next level. And then his ability to snatch the football out of the air. And when the ball's in the air, it's his, right? And that is the difference. If the ball's around him, they're not 50-50 balls. They're 80-20 balls in favor of Rome Odunze.
All right. You played quarterback. You watched him last week. Do you think Michael Penix is 100% healthy right now?
Boy, it's hard to say. He appears healthy, right? When he moves around, he doesn't look hindered. But sometimes you don't know. I remember back to, when Luke Falk was playing at Washington State, he played a whole season with a broken thumb or wrist that nobody really knew about, and nobody said anything, and everybody would always wonder why he's off a little bit. And the guys go through those things, right? They got nicks, they're dinged up, and this late in the season, I wouldn't be surprised if he if he does is a little banged up, and it's kind of the nature of it sometimes, but he certainly hasn't been quite as sharp. Now, look, all bets are off tonight because, my guess is as a competitor, he'll come out and play his best game.
Alex Brink, former Cougie for Sports here on the Rip City Drive. The other thing I'm wondering with Washington, too, they've won 19 straight games. They haven't lost a game since last October. I'm wondering, too, if maybe fatigue is starting to set in because I can't imagine the type of grind of winning week in and week out and the pressure of wanting an undefeated season, needing an undefeated season to try and put themselves in this position. I wonder if that's a factor.
That's the thing about, when you went into the Apple Cup that, I felt like gave Washington State a little bit of an edge is, when you're the hunted and you're undefeated, boy, it's a hard place to live, right? Because, that doubt starts to creep in at times when things don't go your way. That is this going to be the one we drop? Is this the right? And so when you face a good team like Oregon, who's always coming in waves, you're always going to be up against it, right? Like Oregon's favored, but are they really, in the sense that Washington's got everything on the line? A clear path, a really clear path to the playoff, and all these sort of things. So, again, that's a hard place to be, especially when you're talking about 19, 20, 21-year-old athletes. A lot of things can creep into the mental state, and that's why, frankly, I think Kalen DeBoer has done a really nice job as a head coach of keeping that program grounded through it all. But it's going to come to an end at some point, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's tonight.
All right, Oregon's been dominant the last 6 weeks. They've looked terrific. How much should we read into that when considering the competition, or how do you look at that when teams are dominating lesser opponents?
I mean, look, like everybody's on scholarship. So if you're consistently dominating week in and week out other Power 5 college football teams, then that's a feather in your cap. I think you're doing something pretty special. And again, back to my point about 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, it's hard to keep them focused, right? Like when you're playing Arizona State and Stanford and Cal and teams that maybe aren't they're not Washington, or they're not of USC or whatever, the caliber that you can kind of easily get up for. And so, for Dan Lanning to keep those guys locked in the whole way and for them to be as dominant as they have, I think is a real testament to where that program's at. It's a testament to the talent on the roster. I mean, it's an elite, that's an SEC-looking roster, and they show it week in and week out.
Tonight is Bo Nix' 60th start in college football. Can you believe that? 60.
That's amazing.
Gosh.
That's unbelievable.
How do you see it playing out tonight? Who's going to win and why?
I like Oregon. I think, UW's got some real flaws defensively. I like, at one corner they're real solid. At the other, they're not great. At the safety position, they're not great. But the ability to push the ball downfield and attack downfield, Washington State really exposed last week. I think they're okay against the run, but Oregon's elite running the football. I just think Oregon's offense is too much for that UW defense. And, again, I think the UW offense, although probably having the best player on the field, I don't know if they have enough to overcome Oregon's defense, which I think Oregon's defense has always been solid. I think they were really coming on late in the year. They've really found a groove, and they're playing really well, and that front four can really make a difference. And so that's one thing Washington State did last week. They didn't get a sacks necessarily on Penix, but they pushed the pocket back into him. And I think when Oregon sees that tape, they'll realize, okay, we don't necessarily need to get home. We just need to make things uncomfortable for them.
All right, the SEC title game, it's awesome. Bama, Georgia, 1 o'clock on Saturday. Who do you think is going to win that one?
That's a tough one. I tell you what, I mean, I saw maybe a report today some Georgia players might be out. I think that could be a big difference. Feels like Alabama's got a lot of momentum on their side. I never like betting against Nick Saban late in the year. And I think it's going to be back and forth affair. If you put my foot to the fire, I'd probably say Alabama, honestly, especially if those injury reports are correct for Georgia. But I don't know. It's a toss-up to me.
Well, one thing I would like to do is have you be a part of the 13-person playoff committee to help select the teams that are going to go in. Would you put Florida State into the 14 playoff field?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
I think that's the whole point of having the 13. I think that's the whole point of having the committee, right? Is like that's why we got rid of pure computer rankings. That's why we have the human element, so that they can make judgment calls. Like, and God bless Florida State for going undefeated, but they're not at full strength. And so if they're not at full strength with their starting quarterback, you just can't say that, in my opinion, you can't say that they're one of the top 4 teams in the country, based on the other resumes of the other teams. So I don't know. I mean, that's just me. It's hard to say because, look, a lot of people say, well then what's somebody got to do to go undefeated? And I would say that this is an extenuating circumstance, and I think we can all relatively agree on that.
All right, it's a smorgasbord, so I'm going to let you pick, Alex. You've got so many great things going on at eForce Sports. You've got eForce Football. You've got the Yard Baseball Academy, Headquarters Physical Therapy. Which would you like to discuss today?
Man, you got to check out our eForce Performance Training. So strength and speed training for youth and high school athletes, male, female, all sports, all ages. Everybody gets a customized program for their needs based on their age and their development. We have youth classes, we have middle school classes, we have high school classes, 2 facilities. over in Milwaukee off of McLaughlin, and then in Beaverton off of Allen Boulevard. Check out e4sports.com. Click on the performance tab. You can learn more, get a free drop-in session, come in. The off season, this is the time to pay the deposits.
Well, I appreciate your time, buddy. I hope you have a great weekend. And what I would do right now if I were you is just go get Xander in the portal and get started on that right now.
You betcha. I mean, he's $1 million arm for sure.
Dude, you're the best, man. I love it, dude. Enjoy the game tonight.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.
Alex Brink, former Coug, E4 Sports, talking ball. Yeah, I was looking at the stats. My goodness, Oregon. 31 first downs. They were +7 in that category in the first meeting against Washington. Outgained them 541 to 415. They outpassed them by 21 yards. They outrushed Washington 204 to 99. They also won the turnover department and were nearly +10 in time of possession. And they lost the game. The most glaring stat, fourth down efficiency, 0 for 3. Hopefully the game won't come down to Dan Lanning having to make tough fourth down decisions. But what a game. What a game. And Oregon, they've got the material. I love their balance and the way they can attack you with their offense. Bucky Irving is legit. They've got good speed outside. We know that Washington's got a terrific receiving core. No, Dunze is just one of the best. But Oregon's, they got playmakers too. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Dwight Jaynes, the Godfather, going to join us at 4:20. He's down at Allegiant Stadium getting ready for the game. And Justin Myers at 5. When we come back, one thing that I discovered last night that's enjoyable. I'll share that with you next here in the Rip City Drive. Rip City Radio is looking for photos of your children with Santa, not the smiling, successful photos, the other kind that you show your child melting down like a snowman in July. Submit your photo today at ripcityradio.com for your chance to win a Visa gift card just in time to do some holiday shopping. Enter today and good luck from Mountain Timber Market, Quantum Fiber, and Rip City Radio.
The Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Here on 620 Rip City Radio. Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Rip City Drive. Duck fans are going crazy right now. Let's go out to my man, Tony. Used to be in Portland, now he's in Boring. Hey, Tony, you jacked for tonight or what, buddy?
I am. That's funny. When Shacker picked up, I heard the dog bark in the background. I thought it was Puppy Shots.
No, it's not Puppy Shots. No, Puppy Shots is probably asleep right now. That is Dino. Dino! So he's hanging out with Shacker. Yeah, what's up?
I'm Jack. I just, you saw that license plate that I was following, so I'm looking for a little Rip City karma as I work my way home today. And just want to give a prediction, man. I'm going to go Oregon 31 and Washington 24.
All right, Oregon 31, Washington 24. The license plate on a Kia that says Dogs, D-A-W-G-Z, with a Washington sticker above it. So that has to mean the Dogs as in the Washington Huskies. I love the fact that license plate's on a Kia, too. Very nice.
I was just like, of all plates I got to get behind, are you kidding me? Like, is this a bad omen? But I'm just going to negate that by calling you guys and giving the Ducks a little karma, if you will.
You got it, man. It's going to be great tonight. 31-24, and if that happens, you'll be a happy man. And then you can tune in all jacked up for the SEC title game tomorrow.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, just thinking back to, when they lost to Washington and how we were like, oh, this is how it all has to play out. And it played out that way. We're just, a couple hours from it. It's pretty cool. So, there's a couple more steps, but maybe we can finally get that elusive championship. I mean, if any team's going to do it, this one looks pretty damn good.
You got it, my man. There you go. Enjoy the game, Tony. There's Tony and Boring all jacked up for tonight. My big question is, if Oregon gets the win tonight, what is the committee going to do if Alabama wins tomorrow? Because I'm now convinced that if Alabama beats Georgia tomorrow, and I think they're going to, I think they're going to put both Georgia and Alabama in the 14 playoff. I don't care if Alabama is currently sitting at 8 or not. There's no way that a one-loss SEC champ that went undefeated in conference coming off a win over number one is not going to get in the playoff field. There's just no way. And Georgia, who hasn't lost a game in 3 years, they've been 12-0 now for 3 consecutive years. And they're firmly planted at number one. The committee is not going to drop them from 1 back to 5 out of the playoff field. That's not happening. So there's a much greater chance that the SEC will get 2 teams in instead of none. The problem is, for Duck fans, is if Alabama's in, then what do you do with Texas if they beat Oklahoma State? And they look impressive doing so. Many, including Joel Klatt, believe that the committee will put Texas in, and then that leaves you with Georgia, Bama, Texas, and 1 spot remaining. Michigan, right? Undefeated Big Ten champ. It could very well go that way. And then if it's not Texas, what do they do with Florida State? A team that I don't think deserves to be in the playoff field, whether they're undefeated or not. So all I'm trying to say is that if the Ducks win tonight, just prepare yourself for madness and chaos, because trusting in the committee to do what you think they should do is a fool's errand. The 13 people that make up the College Football Playoff Committee, there's 13 of them. They have a couple of business leaders. I think former people who are involved in the game on some level. None of the 13 work full-time in college football, which is insane. It's insane. I cover sports for a living. I can't watch all the games. How are these people that have many other things going on staying on top of everything with every team and all the teams that are involved? And I want chaos because I want the committee to be forced to show their hand. They get lucky and fortunate every year because we avoid this type of level of chaos. But, in the final year of the 14 playoff field, this year is shaping up to be possibly incredible from some of the choices they'll have to make. So I know everyone says that the winner of tonight's game, Oregon or Washington, is in. I agree with that if it's Washington that gets a victory, but I'm not convinced that Oregon's automatically in. depending on what happens with Bama and Georgia, because I don't trust the committee. I do not trust the committee. And you've got these outliers like Texas and Florida State just hanging out. But they've kept Texas in front of Bama all year in the rankings. How are they going to handle that if Bama wins? Because you know Bama's getting in. What do you do with Texas? And there's no way Michigan's going to lose to Iowa. What a horrible game that is. If you hate offense, if you hate excitement, then watch Oregon or watch Michigan and Iowa. What a horrible game that is. Horrible. Now, my dad, he's jacked up right now. And like me, he hates Texas. Oklahoma State is a massive underdog. I think 15 points, but they're 7-3 in their last 10 games against Texas. And I was taught at a very young age that nothing good comes from Texas. I'm a firm believer in that, so I'll be pulling for the Cowboys tomorrow. I'll be pulling for the Cowboys to pull off the upset so that Gundy can get the win and Oklahoma State can grab a conference championship. But I really think the Bama-Georgia game is going to be terrific. And you're right. You know, betting against Saban as an underdog at this time of the year, that's tough to do as well. All right, one quick thought on the Trailblazers, who came away with a impressive 103-95 victory over the Cavs on the road last night. And that's back-to-back wins. They beat Indiana on Monday, 114-110. They got the win last night. 29 points and 10 rebounds for Shaedon Sharpe, who played one of the best games of his young career. Here's the one thing I'll say about the Blazers so far this year. They defend and they play really hard. And I can't help but wonder now that Damian Lillard's no longer in the locker room, Chauncey Billups has got more power and control with that team. So he can lay out the things that he wants them to do, and he's got buy-in from his players. And so one of the things we've been watching with this idea of paying attention to incremental growth is how the players are responding to Billups. Are we seeing definition of what they want to do on offense? Are we seeing the results on defense? And are guys buying in? And I think the answer right now is absolutely yes. They're buying in, they're playing hard, and they're defending. And we haven't been able to say that for years here in Portland. And if you take a look at the defensive stats right now in the NBA, Portland, after that rough home game against Oklahoma City where it allowed them to shoot 60% from the floor and 60% from three, they're now back up in the top 10 in defensive rating. I mean, they're getting stops. They shut down Indiana in the second half, who is the highest scoring team in the NBA at 128 points per game. It was their defense that created opportunities for them last night in the second half when they were able to go on a big run to get back in the game. And they exploded for a 12-0 run in the fourth quarter, which helped them put the game away. So, again, in a season where it's not about wins and losses, but it's about development of the young players, and it's about seeing if the players respond to what Chauncey Billups wants, we're getting that. The team is defending top 10 in the league in defensive rating, and last night we saw more development and improvement from Shaedon Sharpe. So we're getting some signs of life from this group, which is terrific. And that's what you want. Let's go out to Shane in Vancouver. Shane, welcome to the show, my friend. What are your thoughts going into the Pac-12 title game tonight and the weekend?
I'm gripping big time.
Understandable.
Just, you know, why couldn't this be next year when it's the 12 teams that are in, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
I just wish both these teams were in the playoff. But, you know, we're going to watch this game. I don't know if it should be a blowout one way or the other, and one team's just the clear winner, or if a close game suits them better so that everybody watches the whole game and actually sees the product. But then we're going to have to get up the next day on Saturday, and you're going to have to watch Louisville and root for Louisville. And then you got to be rooting for Georgia and praying that one of these two teams gets in. I mean, but you know what? It's the last year for the Pac-12. Isn't that that's going to give it some sentimental love, you know? It's not just a business, is it?
No, you know what's great, man? In the final game of the conference, it's probably the biggest game in conference history. I think Shane is a better representation of the majority of Duck fans. Excited, but yet at the same time gripping. And Daniel, who called in, he's down in Vegas right now. He acted fake tough, like he's confident about tonight, but you know he's gripping too. And you should be, because you're relying on a 13-person committee to determine which four teams are going to go in. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, we got to talk a little NFL. Big game with San Francisco and Philadelphia, and then The Godfather live from Vegas at 4:20.
Here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 4 o'clock. What's going on, my friends? Chad here. A big game tonight, Pac-12 Conference Championship, Oregon and Washington from Allegiant Stadium down in Vegas. Oregon right now a 9.5-point favorite. Kickoff at 5 on ABC. The Godfather going to join us from Vegas at 4:20. And Justin Myers will join us coming up at 5. SEC title game critical for the college football playoff. Georgia and Bama. 1 o'clock tomorrow on CBS from Atlanta. Both teams undefeated in SEC play. The Hawks fall in Dallas last night, 38-35. They're now 6-6, 7th in the NFC playoff standings. They're at San Francisco next Sunday. Trailblazers made a back-to-back wins last night, 103-95 winners at Cleveland, 29 points and 10 boards for Shaedon Sharpe. Portland is in Utah tomorrow to beat the Jazz. Game day at 4, tip-off at 6:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio. More of the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad coming at you right now.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad, presented by Lazy Boy. What is your strategy for comfort?
Yeah, I think Shacker's playing Hall & Oates right now because he wants me to talk about their lawsuit. I am not involved in the lawsuit with Hall & Oates. Maybe.
But they once sued you.
Yeah, they did. They sent cease and desist to the other station I worked at because I was doing Hall & Oates Fridays without their permission, which I enjoyed. But I think what it is, what I read or what I heard in regards to Hall & Oates, I think it was some business venture that they were both involved in. And I think Oates wanted to sell his stake, but I think that was against the agreement. So that's what the lawsuit is over. That's what I heard. And do I think they're going to get back together again and sing music at some point in the future? Absolutely. Bands who say they're done are never done. And bands, performers, musicians, they can't resist the opportunity to get out in front of an audience and perform. So I think somehow they're going to make it. All right, Dwight Jaynes coming up here in about 20 minutes. He'll join us from Allegiant Stadium. He's down there for the Pac-12 title game. Now, I think for those of you who listen all the time, you know how high I am this year on the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they're going to win the Super Bowl. They've got a talented roster, and they're terrific at the line of scrimmage. Jalen Hurts is the same whether they win or they lose. His demeanor, the way he carries himself, I'm a big fan of his game and the way he leads that football team. I think one of the things that it's really a mark of a good team, but one thing I respect about the Eagles, they can win pretty games, score big and win. They can win ugly, low-scoring games. It's really what makes them so tough to play because they can win in a variety of different ways. If they have to play a physical defensive game, they can do that. If they have to line up and run the football, they're fine doing that. Or if they have to drop back and allow Jalen Hurts to make plays, they can do that. Good teams find ways to win games in a variety of different ways. That's a mark of a good team. And the teams that win championships, they have the ability to do that. And you know how the NFL season is. Depending on matchup, or some days you may not have your offense going the way you want, or maybe there's multiple turnovers. Sometimes you're playing in bad weather, whether it's snow, rain, or whatever. You've got to be able to lean on something different week in and week out. And the Eagles have shown they can do that. They did it last year, and they're doing it this year. And right now they're 10-1 and in control of the number one seed in the NFC. And I think what's crazy about the 10-1 record, they're 10-1, and they haven't even come close to playing their best football, which makes them a scary team right now in the NFC. Now, the 49ers, they've righted the ship after 3 straight losses to the Browns, Vikings, and the Bengals. And like the Eagles, they have a loaded roster. Great defense, strong at the line of scrimmage, very good balance. And when they have Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel, they're nearly unbeatable. And look at the playmakers, whether it's Brandon Ayuk or it's Deebo Samuel, it's Christian McCaffrey. Kyle Shanahan has got just unlimited resources in terms of who he could determine to get the football to, depending on what defense they're going to face on a Sunday. and he's really good at scheming. Their running game is terrific. There's not much not to like about San Francisco. Now, all I've said about Brock Purdy, he's doing a heck of a job. He's putting up big numbers, one of the most efficient guys in the NFL, and he's doing a good job of doing exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants him to do. He runs the system. He runs the play the way that it was designed to be run. All I'm saying is that I just don't think you can get to a Super Bowl or win a championship with Brock Purdy at quarterback. And the reason why is that it requires too many things to be perfect in all other phases on the field, especially if you're playing a road game at Philadelphia. The better teams or the best competition, they can take what you do best away, and then sometimes that's going to force a quarterback to be able to drop back and move the chains on 3rd and long when the defense knows what's coming. And that's where the great quarterbacks separate themselves from the rest of the pack. What you do on 3rd and long in obvious passing situations. Can you deliver it on time and on target? Can you buy some time with your legs until a receiver come open downfield? I mean, those are the things that you need in those type of spots. So a road game at Philly in the playoffs, much different. But I do think this game on Sunday, I like the 49ers to win the road game in Philadelphia. Great spot for San Francisco. Number one, they've got a lot more at stake in this game. They've got 3 losses. They cannot afford to take another loss if they hope to have home field or possibly getting 2 games at Levi Stadium. So they've got everything at stake. And a lot of times you look at these games, it's like, okay, who needs it more? Who's got the motivation? Who needs this win? And I think we can look at this game and say it's San Francisco. They need this win right now more so than Philadelphia. Plus, I think after getting whacked in the NFC Championship game last year, regardless of who was on the field, and the fact they didn't have Brock Purdy, I think getting out there, enacting some form of revenge, but also showing themselves that they can go out there in that building and be able to get a win against one of the best teams in football. Sometimes you like those type of games where it's like, okay, this is kind of a measuring stick for us. It gives us a chance to go out there and showcase what we do. But I think an even more impressive part of the number that makes it a good spot for the 49ers, the Eagles right now could be a very tired football team. They're coming off that overtime win over the Bills. The defense for Philadelphia in that overtime game against Buffalo on the field for 92 plays. 92. While the 49ers played the Seahawks on Thanksgiving. So you've got one team with the extra rest, essentially a bye week, playing on Thursday and getting a few extra days off to rest and recoup and start your preparation for Philadelphia, while you've got the Eagles coming in after an overtime game where their defense was on the field for 92 plays. The Niners have the rest. They've got more at stake, and I think they're going to be able to get the win. It's a tough spot for Philadelphia. But I still think Philadelphia will get the number 1 seed in the NFC. I'm starting to buy into Dallas and what I'm seeing from them, but I still think Philadelphia and San Francisco are by far the 2 best teams in the NFL. By far. And I think those 2 teams will be competing in the NFC Championship. That's how I see it. Now, if you take a look at the NFL standings right now, in the NFC, Philadelphia at 10-1, San Francisco at 8-3, followed by Detroit at 8-3. After that, Atlanta is the 4th seed because they play in a weak division at 5-6. Dallas at 9-3, Minnesota at 6-6, and the Seahawks at 6-6. The Packers have a chance to even up their mark at 6-6 this weekend, as do the Rams. So it's going to be a very crowded playoff race in the NFC as these teams start to jockey for position. But I think we can say clearly now, Philadelphia and San Francisco are the 2 best, followed closely by Detroit. And Detroit's in the same boat that the 49ers are. They're playing for a chance to get home games. And for Detroit, if they have to go on the road in the playoffs, I'm not so sure I like their chances. But if they're playing at home in the Dome on that turf, with their playmakers in that offensive line, they can cause problems for anyone, including Philly and San Francisco. So I'll be interested to see how Philadelphia approaches the game. But I would expect, based on rest and based on what Philadelphia went through last week, the 49ers should be the aggressor. They should have more success at the line of scrimmage, and they should be able to control the game. Now, in the AFC, I think it's a 3-team race for the top spot. 2-team race in the NFC, 3 teams in the AFC, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Jacksonville. Jacksonville is in a great spot, not because I think they're the best team in the AFC, but their schedule down the stretch is very favorable. And it's going to give them a great chance to be able to lock down the number 1 seed. Baltimore's playing great football, and Kansas City as well. And both teams, Ravens and Chiefs, playing great defense. So we'll see how things shake out. And by the way, what were the Hawks doing last night? What were the Seahawks doing last night? Lost the turnover battle. Defense got gouged. 0 for 3 on 4th downs and 10 penalties. And the NFL might want to take a look at the officials that are on the field. I mean, it's been some bad crews this year, and we're seeing too many flags. And that game last night, 19 penalties, it was marred by, the flags. I just want them to get the calls right. But what's really frustrating is when you see excessive flags, and then when they go to the booth, even the replay booth can't get it right. It's irritating. And it's hard to win games on the road against good teams when you make that many mistakes. Kyle Shanahan was asked about his team being favored in this game Sunday against Philadelphia. Here's what he had to say.
Are you at all that you guys are the favorites going into this game? They're the home team. They've lost one game, but you're the favorites?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I don't really know how that stuff works, so I don't really know why. It is random.
I like that. I'm really not sure what's going on there. It's kind of random. So there you go. I like the 49ers this weekend. My Broncos, 5 in a row. They've won 5 straight games. Russ, 17 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the red zone. He's the highest-rated quarterback in the red zone this year. 20 touchdowns, 4 picks on the year. That's the best touchdown-to-interception ratio. He's top 5 in completion percentage, top 5 in quarterback rating. And the guy is playing good football right now. And Sean Payton has brought this team back from the grave to where now if they win this game on Sunday against the Texans, they're going to be in a prime position for an AFC wildcard spot. I have no idea who's going to win that game. No idea. I just know that C.J. Stroud's going to be out there wheeling and dealing. And that guy is playing as well as I've ever seen a rookie quarterback play. But I love the storylines. I'm just having fun watching football again. This is a big weekend. We got the Ducks and Huskies tonight, SEC title game tomorrow, and then we got the Broncos and Texans in the morning, followed by the 49ers and Eagles in the afternoon. That's a good day right there. That's a good weekend. That's what we want. Now, in regards, by the way, take a listen to Nick Saban, because you're going to hear a lot of coaches start to get on their campaign trail as soon as some of these games are played this weekend. Nick Saban on whether or not the SEC should have representation in the playoff.
I think there should be some representation from the SEC regardless of who wins the game. Absolutely. I think this is one of the best leagues, in the country. And if you're a one-loss team and you play through this league, I think you're one of the best 4 teams in the country.
There you go. I mean, that's what the coaches will do. And you'll hear Dan Lanning or Kalen DeBoer talking about the Pac-12 and how it's the best conference in the country tonight, depending on who wins. And one thing for certain, whoever loses the game tonight, Washington or Oregon, they're not getting in. It sucks for the Huskies. Good job going undefeated. You now will not get into the playoff because you lost this game. Yeah, but we beat Oregon the first time around. It doesn't matter. You lost this game. When you lose, this matters as well. One thing for certain, I think we can all agree on one thing. Florida State doesn't deserve to be in. No disrespect to the Seminoles or anyone in the state of Florida, but that team should not be in the playoff, with Jordan Travis or not. All right, the Godfather's going to join us next from Allegiant Stadium down in Las Vegas. We'll get his take on Michael Penix. Is he healthy? And who's going to win the game tonight? He'll set the scene for us. Rip City Radio and Holt Homes want to pay your mortgage or rent in 2024. Went up to $18,000 to help offset those monthly payments in the Home for Holidays sweepstakes. Enter today at ripcityradio.com, powered by Holt Homes, built for the Pacific Northwest.
It's Rip City Drive on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, my partner left me for greener pastures. He's down in Las Vegas right now getting ready for the big game tonight. Washington and Oregon. The Godfather, Dwight Jaynes, is back. What's up, buddy?
How you doing, Chad? You doing okay without me? I feel bad about leaving you, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm doing extremely well. I'm pumped for the game this weekend of sports. It's going to be great. So what are some of the things that you've kind of uncovered as you've been bumping around, talking to different people, getting ready for the game tonight?
Well, it's interesting, Chad. This, you know, you've been in this facility, I'm sure, and it's really loud in here. And the most interesting thing I've seen is neither fan base so far, as players have come out to warm up and they've had somebody on the microphone trying to get both sides juiced up a little bit. But the interesting thing is both fan bases seem to boo the other fan base louder than they cheer their own team, which is probably testimony to our society today, I guess.
Yeah, no question. And this, you know, you've seen this conference for a long time. I just think it's amazing that in the final game of the conference that you very well could have the biggest game in the history of the conference where both teams are playing for a conference crown and an opportunity to get into the 14 playoff. That's pretty wild.
It is very wild. It's interesting, too. I think a lot of discussion among everyone, both sides, on the point spread for this game, Chad. It's a disbelief, really, on both sides that it's a 10-point game. Even the Duck fans I've talked to said, hey, I was tempted to make a bet on Washington because of the spread. And most of them didn't do it. I guess that would be a disloyal thing to do. But it's a lot of points in a game like this, it seems to me.
Yeah, there's no question. How about the stat? You mentioned this, and then I heard it come up again today from Greg McElroy, but it's wild because we always hear these different sayings in sports, and the one leading up to this game is, well, you know, it's really hard to beat the same team twice in a season. Well, the stats say the exact opposite. In fact, only one time when you have two teams that play in the regular season and you get the rematch in the conference title, the winner of the first game is 7-1 in the rematch. The only team to win the game was Oregon back in 2014 against Arizona.
Yeah, it's absolutely true, Chad. I'm surprised that it's that big of a margin, but it's true when you think about it. You know, I look back in a lot of those games that team won were not even close. And normally this matchup will often give you an imbalance in strength. And you got to remember, a lot of those games were North versus South. They weren't the matchup of the two best teams in the conference. They were the winner of the North versus the winner of the South. And very often, one of those divisions wasn't all that good in the first place. And I remember the Ducks just romping through, you know, that sort of a situation before. Oregon should be very lucky that they changed the format to just the two best teams in the conference. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gotten in this game if it was still North versus South.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, great point that they get a chance to get the rematch with Washington. Do you think Michael Penix is healthy right now?
You know, Chad, you brought that up, and I'm not sure where you heard it, but I'm hearing it more down here than I heard it in Portland from people on the Washington side. And nobody is speaking with true authority on it. I haven't heard anybody say they know it to be true, but I think there are a lot of people on the Washington side who believe it to be true, that he's been suffering a little bit, not only with the rib problem, but he might have gotten a concussion along the way too. And so there is some concern over his physical condition coming into this game.
You know, I was looking at some of the numbers. You know, the Ducks, they've been great on defense. They're especially strong against the run. On offense, they have great balance. They're sturdier at the line of scrimmage. I mean, when you look at this Ducks team playing, I know you've been impressed with what they've done throughout the course of the year. What do you think is their greatest strength?
I think their greatest strength is really a lot of beef and a lot of skill up front on both sides of the ball. Their offensive and defensive lines, I think, are better than they've been in a long, long time. They have the ability to influence games on both sides of the ball with the big guys up front, and that's huge, you know. And I think on defense, that has covered a lot of problems in the back end of the defense because they've been able to get pressure on quarterbacks, which has allowed better one-on-one coverage in their secondary. You know, you don't have to cover quite as long. So that's going to be a key tonight, I think, especially on the defensive side. They've got to get pressure on Penix. They got to get him off his spots, and they've got to make him rush a little bit, get him off platform. And I think he struggles in that situation. Now, if they can't do that, they're going to get beat long, I believe. They're going to get hurt with some deep throws because he's very good at that. And they have so much speed on the outside. They're going to get behind Oregon's DBs.
Yeah, don't you think that's the key for Oregon? I mean, if Oregon in so many areas in this game has the advantage, but when it comes to the receiving core and Rome Odunze, Alex Brink told me he thinks that Odunze is the best player on the field no matter what game he's playing in. And it would seem to me that if Washington has an edge, it's Penix with that receiving core.
Absolutely agree with that. And they've got to get it to Romeo as much as they can. I mean, games like this, you want your best player with the ball, whether that's catching a pass or even, fly sweeps, things like that, reverses. I think you're going to see him with the ball in his hands more than maybe we have all year, maybe even, getting in on some kick returns, all those things, because he's a difference maker and a playmaker. And if they're going to win, I think he has to be a big part of it.
You know what I love about this game, too, Godfather? The stakes are incredibly high. For Washington, they haven't lost a game since October 8th of last year. And if they lose, they're not going to get into the playoff after an unbeaten season, which is incredible. And for the Ducks, if they lose this game, Dan Lanning will be 1-4 against his rivals, including 0-3 against Washington, and they will miss out on a chance to get to the playoff.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chad. And I've talked to so many Ducks in the last 2 days who said this game to them is the most important Oregon game that they've ever experienced. They believe this game, there's so much riding on it, win or lose. Big gap there, tremendous elation if you win, tremendous disappointment if you lose. I think they believe that, and the 10-point spread has really played into this. This is a game we should win. They feel that. And boy, those are the hardest ones to lose if you lose them.
All right. From the people you've spoken with down there, are you getting any sense on what they think the committee's going to do if Alabama wins tomorrow?
Oh, there's real concern about the SEC right now. Real concern. And I believe that the committee's going to take care of Alabama if they can. If Alabama makes some kind of good showing against Georgia, it wouldn't surprise me to see 2 SEC teams in. I just don't know what to think. I don't think they're as concerned about Texas as they are about Alabama because it's such a magic word in terms of eyeballs on the screen, viewers, and then just the history of the championship series and the teams that have won and been there in the championship game. So I think that's a real concern. I tell you, Oregon, I've told Oregon today, if you win tonight, don't get too carried away. Celebrate tomorrow. Celebrate Sunday when you really know who's in, who's out, because until then, you're not in.
So what do you think about the stadium so far? That's your first time in Allegiant Stadium. What's your take on it?
Well, I like it, Chad. It seems very comfortable. The sidelines are great. I was just texting with my nephew who's got an end zone seat, and I said, how's your seat? And he said, it's great. And he said, I've sat in the 400 level, and even that's a good seat. There's just no bad seats in this stadium. And I think he's right. It's very comfortable. The concessions, concourses look great. People building stadiums nowadays with all the information they have, all the new gizmos, gadgets, and everything else you can put in. There's no excuse for building a bad one anymore, Chad. If you have the money, and they do down here, if you have the money, you should be building a great stadium.
I agree. The Godfather is at Allegiant Stadium getting ready for Oregon and Washington. Who do you think is going to win the game tonight and why, Godfather?
Well, I've thought all the way along, Chad, that Oregon's going to win. And the point spread scares me a little bit because I kind of think maybe that the bettors are being set up here. It just seems like this just doesn't ever happen. A school that's won 19 games in a row, beat this team earlier in the season, has so much to gain by winning. It doesn't make sense that they're 10-point underdogs. But I have to tell you, I still think the Ducks are going to win.
All right, so Ducks get the win, and then Oregon fans can get in front of the TV tomorrow and watch the SEC title game and hope that Georgia wins the game, I guess.
Yeah, that's going to be a big hope right there. If Georgia doesn't win, Chad, I think they're in some trouble.
All right, two things. One, Daniel from North Phoenix, formerly of Gresham, is in Vegas. He said he would buy you a giant Diet Coke if he runs into you. And then also, your brother, the godbrother Bruce, how much money has he won since he landed?
Well, he did pretty well his first day. I know that. And he stayed till Monday. So however much he wins, he's got a great opportunity to lose that money back. So we'll see. I had lunch with David and Bruce at In-N-Out before I came into the stadium. There's one right across the street. So we had a nice time, and he was telling me all about giving you a bad time. And he said, I like to give Chad a bad time. I said, Bruce, do you know that Chad kind of expects that from you?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, well, I guess he should now that I think about it.
Well, yeah, when I ran into him down at Spirit Mountain during the Civil War game, he was busting my balls because he's like, yeah, you take too much time off. And I'm like, what, I'm not allowed to use my vacation? He would prefer that I just work every day and give him time checks.
Yeah, he told me that he said something to you about that. I said, Bruce, come on. The guy's working his tail off down there. It's all the time he's working. Cut him a little slack, for crying out loud. But, that's my brother, and I've gotten used to it myself, so I guess you're going to have to live with it.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change, so I'm just going to embrace it. And I'll tell you what, this is a big game if you and I are having to push back our date for El Gaucho a couple of weeks.
That was a heartbreaker, Chad. That really was. But we can't break the next reservation. We've got to go through with it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, 2 weeks from tonight, we're locked in, baby.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Enjoy the game, man. Thanks for hopping on, and hopefully it's a classic since you're there.
All right, don't have too much fun while I'm gone. I want you to miss me a little bit, okay?
Okay, you got it, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you, Chad.
There you go. There's the Godfather somewhere in the bowels of Allegiant Stadium getting ready for the game tonight. Well, he brought up a good point, too, with the point spread. If I were Coach DeBoer, think about how you could play that as a coach if your team is a 10-point underdog to a team that you beat earlier in the year and you haven't lost a game since October 8th of last year. I would have started early in the week and been like, hey, I don't even know why you guys are showing up to practice. You can't beat them. We're 10-point underdogs. You were lucky to get past them the first time. And had they not missed that field goal, they would have won the game. No one thinks you can win this game. You guys don't belong in the Pac-12 title game. You can't beat Oregon. I would just start working it over and over and over again and just continue to deliver that message. And I think I was talking to Justin Myers earlier today, and he made a great point. How often can a team that's undefeated, having already beaten the team they're going to play in the conference title game, play the role of us against the world? But that's what it feels like. That's what's so scary about this game and why I'm so twisted up on how it's going to play out. Because anytime you come across an event, and it happens every once in a while, where you get to a game similar to what the last year's Pac-12 title game was like, I can't find anyone to predict a Washington victory. Not one. No prognosticators, no experts. I've got no one on the planet that tells me that Washington's going to win the game. All I hear is Oregon, Oregon, Oregon. They're the better team. They've looked more dominant. They've got better game control. They've got more talent across the board, just up and down the line. That's all I hear. And so when I start to hear it one side so heavy, that's when I start to get concerned. And the line opened up at 7.5. It quickly jumped up to 9.5. And as of yesterday, it got up to 10 before it popped back down to 9.5 today. And to me, that number is just a little bit out of whack. 10? How many of you Duck fans really think Oregon's going to go out there and just roll them tonight? Is it going to be a blowout? Is that how you really see the game playing out? So I'm just a little bit leery of that. Leery. No one thinks that Washington's going to win the game. I can't find one. So I'm just saying that a lot of times when everything appears to be one way, how often do we see it go the opposite? And then after the game, everyone's like, I never saw that coming. I didn't see that one coming. I thought they were going to blow them out. Because think of the narrative. The narrative around it's very weird. Now, if Penix is hurt and he can't play up to his abilities, that obviously changes the entire scenario. But think about the narrative. Oregon lost the first game on a missed field goal and 3 unfortunate fourth down calls. They outgained them. They held time of possession. They won the turnover battle. They outrushed them, 204 to 99. Bo Nix passed for more than Michael Penix. They've dominated competition since then. They're 6-0 since the loss at Washington, and they've hammered their opponents. And you start to hear this over and over and over again, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, Oregon can't lose. They're unstoppable. But as we've learned in sports, especially when you're dealing with kids, things can change. So I don't know. It's just really weird to see the narrative and how it's being shaped around this football game, especially when you got a team that's, as good and has been as good as Washington. So we'll see. I'm still not buying the idea that Penix is 100% because it would make sense if you look at the way he's played since the Oregon game. Like an injury would help make sense of some of the performance or lack thereof because they haven't been quite right. But I think the key, we know what Oregon's going to try and do in offense. They got a great balance, but you have to get pressure right up the middle on their offensive front, and you've got to get him off his platform. Penix is one of those guys, he's not the most mobile quarterback, but if you give him that rhythm hop where he can step up and deliver the football, he's deadly. Deadly because he's accurate, he's got confidence, and I love how he's willing to stand in. He's not afraid to take a shot if that is what is needed to be able to deliver the football downfield to one of his wide receivers. My biggest knock on Washington so far this year has been lack of consistency in their run game. They're really dependent upon the passing game of Michael Penix, and I guess that's understandable when you shape a team like that. I also don't like the fact that their defense is lackluster at best. They give up too many yards. You can move the football on them on the ground, through the air. Yeah. So I think for Oregon tonight, it's pretty simple. Avoid the stupid penalties. Understand that you're going to give up a couple of big plays to Odunze and just continue to focus on what you do best. Get pressure on Penix and then let the offense do what they do. And for the Ducks, I think their offense, if they can put points on the board early, the one thing they have to do, where Oregon hasn't been great this year, is goal-to-go situations. Like inside the 10, first and goal. You don't want to settle for field goals in this game. Or if you're Dan Lanning, you don't want to pass up on points if you have a chance to get them. But if they're in those goal-to-goal situations, cashing in and getting touchdowns is going to be critical. Because when you're playing a team like Washington is high-powered enough, they can create issues. So make good decisions. And for Dan Lanning, like if you need to be aggressive or you see a good spot to be aggressive, then do it. But also understand and get a feel for the game plan, how things are going, that if you need to take points with a field goal, don't be afraid to do it. Trust in your defense, which is one of the best in the nation. All right, Justin Myers is going to join us coming up at 5. What are we now, about 30 minutes away from kickoff? It's pretty awesome. You got the Rip City Drive. Rip City Radio is looking for photos of your children with Santa, not the smiling, successful photos, the other kind that you show your child melting down like a snowman in July. Submit your photo today at ripcityradio.com for your chance to win a Visa gift card just in time to do some holiday shopping. Enter today and good luck from Mountain Timber Market, Quantum Fiber, and Rip City Radio.
You're listening to the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad on 620 Rip City Radio. Brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Listen on your free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
All right, Rip City Drive. Big thanks to the Godfather, Dwight Jaynes, who had a chance to join us from Las Vegas, hanging out down there with his brother and his nephew, getting ready for the game tonight. Yeah, I'm excited about the game. This is big time right here. Everything you want in a football game is what we're going to get coming up at 5 o'clock. And we're also going to hear from Justin Myers, who's going to join us coming up at 5. I don't know exactly where he's going to be or what he's going to be doing, but I know that he's getting ready to watch the game. So I said, just come on the show. I just want to gauge where you're at and what you're feeling right as we're getting ready for the game. That's going to be critical. I just want to gauge where you're at, what you're feeling, and so we'll find out what's on his mind. And I talked to him, and I said, how do you feel about the game today? He said, I'm stressed. He's gripping big time. And I think a lot of Duck fans are like that, where they're worried about the game or stressed about the game. But that's what it's all about. If you weren't stressed out or really nervous or jacked up, the game wouldn't mean everything. And these are the type of moments we live for. So I've learned over time to embrace the anticipation, the excitement. You love events that your teams are playing in that have everything at stake. Everything. And that's this game tonight. You win the game, you get the revenge on Washington, and you have a great shot to jump into the 14 playoff and compete for a national championship. You lose the game, and all of a sudden your head coach is 0-3 to Washington and 1-4 in rival games. And then you're going to wind up in a bowl that no one cares about, the Fiesta Bowl. And that sucks. What really sucks, and someone brought this up, I think it was Shane, it's too bad that we're not in the 12-team playoff field right now because Oregon and Washington will both be in. And we might see those two teams rematch in the playoff. But it's just not going to work this year. And maybe now, when we get to the 12-team playoff field, there'll still be issues because a committee is a committee. But maybe it'll be more about the teams that should be there, the best teams, instead of this whole most deserving nonsense. Because Florida State, whether you think they're deserving or not, they're not one of the 4 best teams. They're not. Right now, if you look at the top 8 teams in the college football playoff rankings, the top 8 teams, Georgia's number 1, Michigan, Washington, Florida State, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, and Alabama. You have 8 teams that can make a claim to be a part of the 14 playoff. Florida State's the worst of those 8 teams by far. And I'm not trying to disrespect Florida State for their season or the fact they went through the schedule and defeated, but they're the number 8 team if you rank those teams based on who the best is. They shouldn't be there. And if Florida State gets a spot because they beat Louisville tomorrow, they're going to be taking away a spot from a team that should be in there. I guess what I care most about, much less about resume, I care more about having the 4 best teams in the country. And the same thing with Georgia. I don't care if they lose that game to Bama or not tomorrow. They deserve to be in the playoff field. They're absolutely one of the 4 best teams in the country. And Vegas would have them favored against anybody else. Michigan, Washington, Oregon, take your pick. So I think Georgia should absolutely be a part of the playoff field. If Alabama beats Georgia tomorrow, they should be a part of the playoff field. I don't doubt that Bama's one of the 4 best teams in the country with the best coach and the way they've been able to improve throughout the course of the year. And I do think Oregon has showcased that they're one of the 4 best teams. I do. And if Washington wins tonight, they've showcased it. You've got to separate Washington and Oregon somehow. They're going to play tonight. And Washington, if they win, with their talent level and what they've been able to do, I think they should rightfully grab one of those top 4 spots. With Michigan, I think they're one of the 4 best. No question. They have dominated their competition. You know, Michigan and Oregon are very similar from the standpoint that their resumes in terms of overall schedule is not particularly great, but they've dominated their competition handedly. And they took care of business in the big game. They beat Ohio State. And for Oregon, their Ohio State is tonight. It's Washington. And the great thing about the Ducks is they have no excuses. You get a rematch with Washington, the only team that beat you in the Pac-12 title game. You got to go out and take advantage of that opportunity. The hard part for the committee, if they put Georgia and Bama in, is what do you do with Texas? What do you do with Texas? I don't doubt that they're one of the best teams in the country, but I would put Washington or Oregon in ahead of them. But they're ranked ahead of Alabama right now, and they beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So if Bama beats Georgia and gets in, don't you think the committee almost has to put Texas in the 14 field? And if that happens, what's going to happen to the Pac-12? What if Florida State wins? See, this is why the SEC title game is everything. Because if Bama wins, there's going to be chaos. If Georgia wins, the committee will take a big breath and a sigh of relief, and they'll just get ready for their selection show on Sunday. It's really all about Bama and Georgia. Because I do believe the committee will put both Georgia and Bama in if the Crimson Tide win tomorrow. And I think they're going to. But we'll see. You know, Georgia's been impressive down the stretch. I don't think they're obviously not as good as they were last year or the year before. But what they've done that's impressive is they've, in the 3 games that really mattered towards the end of the season, Ole Miss and Missouri and Tennessee, they dominated those games. And I think the weird part for Georgia is while they're, physical at the line of scrimmage, they're a little bit younger and they're giving up more rushing yards than what we're accustomed to. So they're not as stout on the line of scrimmage. That's part of what makes a playoff berth this year so great is that even with Georgia, who I think is the best, there's not one team that's just so dominant that if you play them, you have no chance. Oregon can compete with any of the teams in that top 8. They can play with Bama. They can play with Texas. They can play with Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, Michigan, Georgia. They can play with any of them. And so if you get in, you've got a good chance to have a chance to win a national title. And that's exciting to me. Last year, not so much. Ohio State came close to upsetting Georgia, but I think we all knew that Georgia was the superior team. So it's a big opportunity for Oregon tonight. But this is the fascinating part about this weekend. If Washington wins tonight, there's no intrigue. They're in. They're unbeaten. They're a conference champ. They beat Oregon twice. If Oregon wins, then we turn our attention to the SEC title game to see how it shakes out. And that's going to be fun. And I know how you Duck fans are going to handle it, too. If you get the win tonight, you'll celebrate hard for about 4 or 5 hours. Then you'll get a little bit of rest and get ready for tomorrow. And you're going to tune in hoping that Georgia takes care of business. Hoping. But Nick Saban, I think, what was the stat? I think it's 11-1. I think Nick Saban's 11-1 in SEC title games. It's either 11 or 12-1. That's crazy. Nick Saban is a freak. All right, when we come back, Justin Myers will join us live, and we'll get his thoughts leading up to kickoff with Oregon and Washington here on the Rip City Drive. Grab your VIP pass to the table where the big NFL conversations happen with the new show, Schrager's NFL Roundtable. Join Peter Schrager, the insightful voice of NFL Network and Fox Sports, each week as he opens up his notebook and shares the inside scoop on the latest developments in the world of football. But that's not all. This podcast goes beyond the headlines. Peter is joined by a distinguished guest list featuring decision makers, power brokers, and celebrity football fans, creating a dynamic roundtable discussion that takes you beyond the surface of the game. Get ready to be in the know and at the heart of the action with Schrager's NFL Roundtable every week on the iHeartRadio app.
Here's what you need to know. From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, what's going on? 5 o'clock. The official kickoff time for the Pac-12 title game is 5:14. So we're just minutes away now from the showdown, Oregon and Washington. It's at Allegiant Stadium down in Las Vegas. Right now, the Ducks are a 9.5-point favorite. Wow. SEC title game is critical for the college football playoff. Georgia and Bama tomorrow at 1. It's going to be on CBS. You're going to play at the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. Both teams undefeated in SEC play. The Seahawks took the loss in Dallas last night, 6-6, currently 7th in the NFC playoff standings. They'll be at San Francisco next Sunday. The Blazers have won back-to-back games, took out Cleveland last night, on the road again tomorrow in Utah to meet the Jazz. The game day will start at 4, tip-off at 6:30 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Coming up next on the Rip City Drive, Justin Myers will join us, and we'll get his thoughts on the big game heading right up to kickoff.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad, presented by Lazy Boy. What is your strategy for comfort?
All right, 13 minutes away from kickoff now. We go and talk with our good man, Justin Myers. Justin, talk to me, man. How are you feeling now that we're 13 minutes away from kickoff?
Anxious. I think that's the proper word. Anxious, nervous, excited, eating my feelings, and then once I get off the radio with you, drinking my feelings, all the things are going to be combined over the next 3.5, 4 hours.
All right, for you, now I know you're a great man that enjoys fine food and a good beverage, but I also know that you want to be able to, have your wits about you so you can stay focused on the game. So how have you learned to pace yourself throughout the course of an evening when your Ducks are playing?
Well, here's the good news, Chad, is I've got a lot of practice at this. You know what I mean? I've been doing this a while. And so, you got to learn, don't go too hard, too early. It is a pacing game, right? You've been out there on the golf course for some guy by hole 3, and you're like, he ain't going to make it 18. Like, I have learned my pace. I have learned my numbers. You got to eat food, and I know you will appreciate this because I specifically for this game, because like I said, I'm going to be eating my feelings and my anxiety with carbs, and I got a big old bag of Southwest flavored dots for this game sitting right next to me.
The Southwest flavored dots, arguably the greatest pretzel of all time.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's arguable, to be perfectly honest, at this particular time, but I know that was my go-to. So, yeah, we're going with cold, crisp ranch waters for the game, and we're going Southwest dots.
All right. This stat is just wild to me because you know how everyone talks about the game like, oh, it's really hard to beat a team twice in the same year, and yet here we are where the team that won the first matchup when they rematch in conference title games, the winner of the first game 7-1. Isn't that wild?
That is nuts. I mean, because usually you would think, like, you go to the NFL, right, when you see a team that matches up the second time in the playoffs, and you can, like, oh, they'll go back, they'll figure out all the things that they screwed up, whereas, if you won the game, you can try to clean up a couple of things here and there, but you kind of want to go in with the same game plan. So usually that would tell you if you are the team that lost, you kind of know their game plan going in. But college football is a different beast. Conference championship games are a different beast. Neutral site, indoors. This is the other thing I was thinking about earlier today. Chad, neither of these teams have played indoors. Now, I don't know how much of a factor it's going to be, but coming from where Washington was 2 weeks ago in that rainstorm in Corvallis, and, some of these cold outdoor nights now playing inside on a real fast track, it is going to be lights out offensively.
Yeah, I love that. I don't want a game of this magnitude to be marred by poor weather conditions. Is this, in fact, the biggest game in conference history?
We were talking about it earlier today, and I can't think of a bigger game, right? There have been some top 5 matchups. There have been some Oregon-Stanford matchups back in the Chip Kelly era. There was, obviously, you go back to, I think, that Halloween night when Oregon took out USC, but those are always beginning of the season with still so much left ahead to play. I don't think we have seen anything at the end of the season where, whether it is the championship game that's only been around since 2011, or even before that, like a rivalry game, I'm sure you could probably go back and find a USC-UCLA, 1 versus 5 matchup, but in an era where you've got a college football playoff on the line, you've got a conference championship on the line, I believe this game is win and get in. We haven't seen that in the modern history of the Pac-12. So the Pac-12, once it hits triple zeros, will cease to exist as a football conference, ending it with is likely the biggest matchup in Pac-12 history, number 3 versus number 5, with national championship game or national championship implications on the line.
No question. We're talking with Justin Myers, who's getting ready for kickoff. We're 9 minutes away. What are you concerned about the most in this game? Is it self-inflicted wounds? Is it Penix and Odunze? Like, through a Duck fan's mind, what are you worried about the most as we get ready for kickoff?
All right, 3 things probably concern me the most. For Oregon's standpoint, like just Michael Penix and Odunze and their hookup, and if they get rolling downhill and if they get going early and often and turn into a shootout, that's something Washington is incredibly comfortable playing in. So that obviously scares me because Penix is a guy that is capable of lighting up the stat sheet. Second thing, Oregon's kicking game has been inconsistent at best, and Camden Lewis has had some struggles throughout the year. If this one comes down to a field goal, we saw what happened in Seattle. We saw a couple of times this year where they just have not been able to execute the kicking game. And the third thing, Oregon hasn't played a tight game, Chad, since Washington.
Yeah.
And so all of those concerns that a lot of Oregon fans had about Dan Lanning and tight games and going for it and kind of having that judgment call, and is it too aggressive? Is it time to play it safe? We haven't had those moments since that fourth down decision in Seattle against the Huskies about 6 weeks ago. So there really hasn't been any of those tight games. That's probably my biggest concern is Oregon, Lanning, fourth down call in a tight game.
It must suck to be Camden Lewis. He's the all-time leading scorer, and yet no one wants him in a position where he has to make a big kick tonight.
Not one bit. Not one bit. What's nuts is like he was dialed in a year ago. Something has happened. I don't know. I don't want to call it the yips, but just there's been an inconsistency in his game, both on the kickoffs and in kicking the field goals.
If Oregon wins tonight, how interested will you be in the SEC title game tomorrow?
I think massively interested. I'll be interested in the SEC title game. I'll be the biggest Louisville fan in the world, Chad. Heck, I might start rooting for Iowa. I mean, it's going to get weird, right? Oregon wins this game, and it's going to get weird tomorrow. You're going to be rooting for teams you never thought you'd root for, in particular Georgia and Louisville. Like, never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be so invested in Louisville, Florida State, in the ACC title game. But, yeah, that's what it comes down to. Now, I firmly believe Oregon wins this game, they get in. I do not believe that they will get left out of the mix if they win this game, even if Alabama beats Georgia. Now, I know some people don't believe that. I think they will, because I don't know if you can, as a committee, legitimately leapfrog a team up and over the number 5 team in the country who just beat number 3. But to play it safe, it'd be really, really nice if Louisville would just beat Florida State. And that's a point. It's a 1.5 tomorrow. So it's the only one that seems to be, other than the Pac-12 game, and I guess the SEC, that looks to be competitive. Because Michigan's a 23-point favorite against Iowa. If Iowa even scores a touchdown,
they won't score a touchdown. That's one of the most awful games of all time. And one thing I know, we can argue about Bama, Oregon, and all these other teams, but Florida State does not belong in the top 4. They're not one of the 4 best teams in the country. Of the top 8 teams right now, they're number 8 in terms of quality of teams, in my mind.
Here's the thing, Chad. You and I kind of disagree on the 12-team expanded playoff. Now, I don't think it's ultimately going to be the best thing for college football, but it will fix this problem, which is there's an undefeated team and there's a one-loss team, multiple one-loss teams, where it is clear that if you flip schedules, Florida State playing Oregon's schedule, playing Alabama's schedule, or playing Texas's schedule, has about 3 losses on the in the loss column. You go to the 12-team playoff, you eliminate that problem because then both teams will get in. It's one of the silliest things we ever decided to do in college football, which was, hey, let's make Power 5, but only let 4 teams into the playoff, and then this obsession with being undefeated. But I'm with you. Florida State presents a problem. I don't think they are one of the 4 best teams, even if they beat Louisville. But we have got 130 years of undefeated is king, right? And undefeated carries such a weight that I don't think they get left out.
I agree. I agree with that. And you know what's funny about you, Justin, is that all the things that you don't like NIL and expanded playoff, your team is going to benefit and is benefiting directly from that. NIL allowed your team to go out and get Bo Nix, who's been sensational, and an expanded playoff field. I can't wait to talk to you a couple of years down the road when you're like, hey, dude, I kind of like Oregon being in the playoff every year. It's awesome.
First off, Chad, what are you talking about? You don't think Bo Nix came back to Oregon at the kindness of his heart and his love for the great state of Oregon and the beautiful Willamette Valley and the fine people in the great state of Oregon? You don't think this was just pure love for for what is now his alma mater in the University of Oregon? This is not about NIL. This is about coming back and potentially making $2 million, if the number that I heard is around correct. This is about coming back for the love of the university.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you wouldn't mind the school doling out $1 to $2 million for Cam Ward either, because Bo Nix is done after this season.
I think Oregon might be setting their sights a little bit higher. Who knows? Let's put Cam. Can you get like a contingency? How's NIL going to work now that this whole quarterback carousel is going to be happening? Can you get a guy? But hey, if we get like Riley Leonard, if he decides he wants to come out west, we're going to null and void this. It's going to get ugly, by the way.
Oh my goodness. Hey, so do you like Oregon tonight? And if so, do you think they're going to cover the monster number?
The number at 9.5 right now is such a monster. I like Oregon by a touchdown. I don't think Washington's going to go away. That's why the number scares me so much, because if you've watched Washington all year, they have not blown anybody out since that Oregon game. They have looked mediocre against teams like Arizona State and Stanford. But you know what they have not done? They haven't had a total clunker of a game. They don't stop, and they don't quit their offensive game plan. When it looks like they might pack it up, they still keep throwing the back shoulder fade to Rome Odunze, and Penix will keep chucking it down the field, and they don't quit. It is incredibly irritating. That's why I think they hang around. Even if Oregon State jumps out early, Washington has the firepower to get back in the game offensively. I like Oregon, but I like them by a touchdown.
Is there anything worse than losing twice to Washington in the same year?
My house and my wife, who is a Washington alum, that I would have to go home to tonight. We were watching the game separately, by the way. Trying to watch it together. Yeah, separately watching the game, just for the good of each of our fandoms. We watched it together this last time. It did not go well. It was tense in the house, so we decided, you know what? Believe it or not, we actually are friends with another couple in Portland who is also a split household. So we've split up, me and my buddy James, who are both Oregon fans, and her friend Riley. They're Washington fans. I don't know where they're at. They're out watching the game somewhere else. But, yeah, the only thing worse than losing to Washington 3 times in a row, twice in one season for Dan Lanning, is the house that I go home to tonight with my Washington Husky wife. I can just see the grin on her face.
Yeah, and she'll be loving it. Wait a second. Where's the dog tonight? Is Crash with you or what?
Crash is holding down the fort at home. He's good to go. Okay. He's got a bed. He's got blankets. He's incredibly happy with us not yelling at the TV during this game.
All right, my man. You're now 40 seconds away from kickoff. Go get a beverage, pace yourself, and enjoy the game tonight, my friend.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.
There you go. Justin Myers. Justin Myers live and in person as he gets ready for the game tonight. And he's right. His wife, big Husky fan. He's a big Duck fan. Divided household. It's probably smart that they're watching the game in separate places tonight. All right, they're getting ready for kickoff. And this is going to be tough for me because once this game kicks off, no one's going to be listening to me. And yet I've got to be here for the next 40 minutes trying to not pay too much attention to the game. So we are set down in Vegas, Washington and Oregon for the Pac-12 championship. Big thanks to Justin Myers. You got the Rip City Drive. Rip City Radio is looking for photos of your children with Santa, not the smiling, successful photos, the other kind that you show your child melting down like a snowman in July. Submit your photo today at ripcityradio.com for your chance to win a Visa gift card just in time to do some holiday shopping. Enter today and good luck from Mountain Timber Market, Quantum Fiber, and Rip City Radio. The holiday playlist that fits every mood from last Christmas to my only wish this year. The Christmas Hits playlist on the iHeartRadio will put everyone in the holiday spirit. Search Christmas Hits on the free iHeartRadio app. Rip City Radio and Holt Homes want to pay your mortgage or rent in 2024. Went up to $18,000 to help offset those monthly payments in the Home for Holidays sweepstakes. Enter today at ripcityradio.com. Powered by Holt Homes, built for the Pacific Northwest. there long term, but then when a better opportunity opens up, he jumps on it. You're stuck there? That's not right. So now players have a chance to move around. Like if you're a player at Oregon State and you were recruited by certain coaches, maybe Jonathan Smith or somebody else, and now they're gone. What do? You stay there? No. You should have the opportunity to look around and see what else is there. And for Cam Ward at Washington State, I mean, that guy's a terrific talent, a great quarterback. I can't blame him for wanting to leave. He went to Washington State, and he's played terrific football since he's been there, but now the school is left without a conference, and they're going to be playing against lesser competition. That's not going to help him get to the next level. You know, Cam Ward's a guy that wants to improve his draft stock and put himself in a position to compete against the best. So he needs to look at his options. And if he can go to a different school and make money in the process and have a chance to compete against the best to further his draft stock, he should do it. So more power to him. I know it sucks for the current school, but I like the players having freedom of movement. But $1 to $2 million, that's incredible. You know, Alex Brink joined me earlier today, and he kind of laughed at that. He's like, man, what could I have made in the portal? What could I have done in NIL money? And you know there's a lot of players now. A lot of them have, you know, kids who are in college sports now, and they're looking at what's available, and they just can't believe it. But I do know from talking to former players that NIL money is a very big part of the decision-making process now because it's there, and if you have access to it, you got to take advantage. So they're definitely going to look at that. It may not be everything. It may not be the single decision as why you choose a school, one school over another, if the money is equal, but it's definitely a factor. And I understand it. And I like it. The players have the opportunity to transfer now. They've got a chance to, you know, profit off their name, image, and likeness, and I think that's great. Right now, Washington is driving the football down. It's the opening possession of the game. Less than 10 minutes to go first quarter, and they're now in the red area inside the 20. First down and 10, and Washington looking to draw first blood in this Pac-12 title game. It's amazing. $1 to $2 million. I love coaches, too. Matt Rule's like, let's just be clear on what we're dealing with here.
Make no mistake that a good quarterback in the portal costs, you know, $1 million to $1.5 million to $2 million right now. So just on the same page, right? So let's make sure we all understand what's happening. So, you know, there's some teams that have $6 or $7 million players playing for them.
Yeah, we understand. We understand. Now, of course, after the Pac-12 title game tonight, the one big game we're all going to be paying attention to is the SEC title game tomorrow. Georgia and Bama. Georgia right around a 6-point favorite right now. And, of course, the big question is what's the committee going to do with both teams if Alabama gets the win? Nick Saban, he'll share his thoughts on what he thinks they should do. Take a listen to this.
I think there should be some representation from the SEC regardless of who wins the game. Absolutely. I think this is one of the best leagues, you know, in the country. And if you're a one-loss team and you play through this league, I think you're one of the best 4 teams in the country.
There you go. And there's Nick Saban. Well, of course he's going to say that. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't know if the SEC is the best, you know, conference in football this year. Maybe they are. I know the Pac-12 is right up there with their play this year and quality of teams from top down. But all I know is this. You're talking about a committee. There's no way that they're going to leave out a one-loss SEC champ. So if Alabama wins, they're going to get in. And if Georgia loses, and it's their first loss in 3 years, even without a conference champ, I highly doubt they're going to drop Georgia out. Now, I've talked with Justin. He thinks they would. I don't think they will. I think both teams probably get in. I guess the other big question is, what do you do with Texas, who beat Alabama? If they win the Big 12, they've got one loss, and they've got to win in Tuscaloosa. What do you do with Texas? It would almost seem like the committee would put them in as well because they've had Texas ranked ahead of Alabama ever since the rankings came out. So that's what makes that SEC championship game so interesting tomorrow if Oregon wins the game tonight. And right now, Washington, second down and 17. They pick up a yard, so it's going to be third down and 16 from just inside the 20 with just over 8 minutes to go in the first quarter. No score with Oregon and Washington. So very good opening drive for Washington. Obviously, they probably have the idea of They've tried to run the football a little more on this opening drive. They probably think, hey, if we control the clock and we keep Bo Nix in that offense off the field, we're going to give ourselves a better chance. And Washington has done a better job over the last few weeks of, showing more effort and commitment to the run game. And I'm always a big fan of that. Bo Nix can drop back and throw it as much as you need him to get the job done. But I also like having my quarterback in a position to where, you can have some balance. All right, Washington incomplete on third down, 4th down and 16. So they'll bring on the field goal unit and look to take an early lead at 3-0. As Penix was looking to attack the end zone but couldn't get the completion there. So there you go. We are underway in the Pac-12 title game. Elsewhere, I did want to talk about the Trailblazers a bit. Very impressive win last night in Cleveland. And it was a game where they got off to a very poor start. And they were down by 16 in the second quarter at a score of 40-24. They were making mistakes. They had 15 turnovers in the first half. They weren't playing a clean brand of basketball, but they really started to tighten things up as the game went along. And they were able to have a strong run there in the second quarter, put themselves right back in a position to get in the game, down 6 at halftime. And then all of a sudden, Cleveland came out. First 8 points they scored there in the third quarter, back up by 14. But the Blazers continued to chip away and once again went on another run. It was really a game of runs. And before you know it, the Blazers were in striking distance there in the fourth quarter. And then they poured on a 12-0 spurt to take control of the game. And what I've noticed with this team that's so impressive this year has just been their willingness to defend. They're back up in the top 10 in defensive rating. They're committed to playing defense as a team. And then you've got not just one guy, but multiple guys, whether it's Matisse Thybulle or it's Tamani Kamara. But you've got a willingness from multiple players on the floor to defend and to play hard. And while the Blazers may lack in the talent department, and they're going to be overmatched many nights when they take the floor based on, just star power or firepower that they're facing against another team. When the Blazers defend like this and they continue to show that type of effort, they're going to put themselves in a position to compete. And that's been the most impressive part so far this season. The wins haven't been there. They've won back-to-back games, which is great, but they've already experienced a long losing streak. But their willingness to compete and get after it's impressive. Because one of the big question marks I had, and I'm sure a lot of you were with me on this going into the season, what is Chauncey Billups all about? Does he know what he's doing? Is he the right coach? And I really didn't have an answer because, the first 2 years, he wasn't exactly set up for success because you had seasons in which they were focused on tanking to improve draft position. And so I really don't think you can evaluate too much of what Chauncey Billups did over the first couple of years. But I think this year is the first year going in where it's like, okay, we have more of a roster of the type of guys that he wants to coach that are made up of the makeup he's looking for. And now we can start to see what he can do with this team in a couple of different areas. One, what about the development of the young guys, namely Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp? I think Shaden Sharp is showing terrific strides. He was the best player on the floor yesterday, 29 points and 10 rebounds, shot a high percentage, made good decisions, was more decisive when he attacked the rim, made some big shots. He was terrific. And Shaden Sharp, while he continues to struggle making shots, he dished out 7 assists and looked a lot more comfortable with the basketball in his hands making decisions. And we're starting to see the game slow down and those passing windows be a little more clear in his eyes with what he's seeing on the floor. I think early on he was probably just stunned at how quick even the 4s and 5s move in the NBA compared to what he saw in the G League. So we're seeing some movement in the right direction for Scoot, but Shaden has made a gigantic leap this year, and he played terrific last night. So we're seeing some development in the youngsters, which is great, not to mention Tamani Kamara. I didn't know much about him when he came over, but so far I see a guy who's really long, very much a defender, wants to defend, doing what the coaches ask, and making a difference on the floor. And I would say that that's been the recurring theme is multiple players making an impact, making game-winning plays, and helping the Blazers be in a position to win some of these games. The advantage for them in the last couple of games against Indiana and Cleveland is that the offense has been strong in the second half. They got 31 points in the fourth quarter against Indiana. They had 63 points in the second half last night against Cleveland. So they're getting more guys to make shots. They're shooting better, a better percentage from downtown. For most of the year, they've been right around 30% from three-point makes. They're not going to be the best three-point shooting team in the league, but they're not 30% bad. Or as Casey Holdoff pointed out to me yesterday, a lot of times when teams get off to a hot start, you'll see a regression to the mean. It can go the other direction, too. You get off to a cold start, but, the numbers will adjust as the season continues to play out. So they're getting better three-point shot making, which has been helpful, especially over the last 5 games. But their defensive effort is there. And the willingness to defend and get after it is nice. And we haven't seen that in a long time. Like I've said before, I just can't take a team seriously if they defend, if they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league, which they certainly were for multiple seasons. But this year is totally different. So how do we evaluate Chauncey? Well, early in the season so far, I think it's been great. I think we can say, you know what? They're getting the job done. They're responding defensively. They've made terrific strides on that side of the floor. So much so that I didn't think it was possible. Then we look at the development of the youngsters. We're seeing progress in that department. And we're seeing some definition of what they want to accomplish on the offensive side of the floor and defensively. Now, there's a lot of work to do, but these are all encouraging signs. Also, the last couple of games, the guards have done a much better job of getting DeAndre Ayton the ball early in games in a position where he can score. And I like him. I like what he has to work with. I just like his attitude, but he's also a shot maker and can be very helpful, during this stretch when Anthony Simons is not going to be available. So I guess all in all, I like what I see so far. Like I said, going into the season, I wasn't worried about wins and losses, but just progress. And, we can point to several categories. They're doing a great job of contesting the three-point line, limiting opponents' three-point attempts. Teams are not shooting a high percentage. They're one of the best three-point defensive teams in the NBA. And overall defense is there. They've just been really solid. So it's been very effective. All right, Pac-12 title game. The Ducks, 3-and-out. They're going to punt. Washington has a 3-0 lead, and they're going to get the ball back. So not the best of starts for Oregon out of the gate. And they probably got away, Washington did, with the penalty there, but they'll punt and they'll continue to move on. So 3-0 Washington. But, yeah, that's it. I like what I see so far from Portland. They're going to be in Utah tomorrow to take on the Jazz. Jazz not a very good team. Opportunity for Portland to be able to go out and scratch out another win. Also, the 2 dates that they did not have games for because of the in-season tournament play, they're going to play down in San Francisco against the Warriors on the 6th, and then they're back at it on the 8th. They're going to be home to take on the Dallas Mavericks. Both those games will tip off at 7 o'clock. All right, we'll come back. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad. Hope you're enjoying your Friday evening. And hopefully, for those of you who have made it home, are enjoying the football game right now. Grab your VIP pass to the table where the big NFL conversations happen with the new show, Schrager's NFL Roundtable. Join Peter Schrager, the insightful voice of NFL Network and Fox Sports, each week as he opens up his notebook and shares the inside scoop on the latest developments in the world of football. But that's not all. This podcast goes beyond the headlines. Peter is joined by a distinguished guest list featuring decision makers, power brokers, and celebrity football fans, creating a dynamic roundtable discussion that takes you beyond the surface of the game. Get ready to be in the know and at the heart of the action with Schrager's NFL Roundtable every week on the iHeartRadio app. Rip City Radio and Holt Homes want to pay your mortgage or rent in 2024. Went up to $18,000 to help offset those monthly payments in the Home for Holidays sweepstakes. Enter today at ripcityradio.com, powered by Holt Homes, built for the Pacific Northwest. Before we reveal which superstars will join us on our iHeartRadio Jingle Ball Tour this year, relive the biggest shows and artists from Jingle Ball's past on our iHeartRadio exclusive Jingle Ball playlist. Open your free iHeartRadio app and search Jingle Ball to listen from anywhere, anytime. Rip City Radio is looking for photos of your children with Santa, not the smiling, successful photos, the other kind that you show your child melting down like a snowman in July. Submit your photo today at ripcityradio.com for your chance to win a Visa gift card just in time to do some holiday shopping. Enter today and good luck from Mountain Timber Market, Quantum Fiber, and Rip City Radio. Well, it's early, but right now Washington is absolutely dominating every phase of the game in the Pac-12 championship. They're up 10-0 after a Dylan Johnson touchdown run from 5 yards out. It's exactly what I've been talking about all week. That line just stunk to high heaven. I didn't understand it. There's no way the Ducks were a 7.5-point favorite over the Huskies, and the line climbed all the way up to 10. Anytime, just remember this in sports, anytime someone tells you that something's going to happen and every single person says it's going to go down that way, you can assume the opposite. Crazy. But this next drive coming up for Oregon is critical because if they go 3 and out or if they turn it over, this game could get out of hand. But most concerning is the way that Washington right now is moving bodies at the line of scrimmage. They're blowing Oregon off the ball, and it's creating massive holes in the run game. And Washington right now, you know, when you think Washington, and rightfully so, you think Penix and you think Odunze. You think about the receiving core. You think about, you know, the high-flying offense. But tonight what they've done is they've come out and they've got incredible balance so far with their offense. 52 yards on 9 carries and a touchdown for Dylan Johnson. 6 of 9 passing for Penix, 52 yards. And the Ducks' first possession, 3 incompletions, punt. I mean, you really can't ask for a better start to the game for Washington. You couldn't have scripted a worse start for Oregon. But that's really been what's amazing to me. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy. Washington really getting after it right now. Running the football. They're almost equal in numbers, number of passes, number of runs. All right, there you go. This is going to be a critical drive. How they respond, the response here on this drive is going to be nice because a game like this can get out of hand quickly. We've seen it before in the Pac-12 title game. Oregon needs to respond. But great start by Washington. Physical at the line of scrimmage. This is like I was telling you, man, if I was Coach DeBoer, he probably spent all week letting them know that they had no chance. Letting them know about how everyone was doubting them, how for some reason they were a 10-point underdog. Oregon's better. They've been dominating competition. You guys have been sliding by. And it's amazing when you can use that type of psychology on your team and just continue to pump that into their minds throughout the course of the week leading up to the game. So by the time they arrive, they're just ready to get after it because they're tired of hearing about how great the other team is. But again, being down 10-0 when you have a quarterback that's making his 60th start, you take confidence in that. That's your reason for optimism, is knowing that you've got a quarterback who's been there and done that, who's got a lot of experience, who isn't going to lose his mind, you know, because they're facing a 10-0 lead. And that's an advantage when you got experience at quarterback. That's what I love about this game. Both guys, Penix, Nix, experience. Been there, done that. They know what they're doing. Wow. That's why sports is like the greatest reality television show of all time. Because no matter how much you think something's going to go down a certain way, especially when you're dealing with college sports, you don't know because you're dealing with youngsters. You don't know how they're going to respond, what was going through their mind during the week. Are they going to be ready to go? Do they listen to all the noise? There's so many different things that go on. And Bo Nix right now running for his life, throws an incomplete. Now here's another interesting part. 4th down and 1 deep in their own territory. Are they going to be aggressive and go? Or do they punt? See, this is fascinating to me because Dan Lanning's all about the aggression. They have the ball at their own 32-yard line. Would he go for it? Oh, Nick's just got smashed. All right. We'll see what they decide to do. Wild. And it looks like they're going to punt. They're in punt formation. And he's probably doing the right thing. Your team's off to a slow start. You want to keep it. No need to do something harsh right now. All right, so Washington's got the ball back. 2 3 and outs for Oregon. 1st down and 10 Washington, 2:24 to go in the first quarter there in Vegas. Crazy. See, this is why you play the games. And how about Washington plus 9.5 looking like free money right now. Woo. There you go. So the schedule for tomorrow, in case you were curious, I'm curious because I can't keep it all straight in my mind. 9 o'clock on ABC, Oklahoma State, Texas from Arlington at AT&T Stadium for the Big 12 championship. The Cowboys are 9-3 on the year. Texas 11-1. Somehow the Longhorns are 15-point favorites. Oklahoma State 7-3 in their last 10 games against Texas. So my dad's pumped. He's an Oklahoma State grad, and I am pulling for the Cowboys because I want my dad to be happy and win the Big 12 championship. And I also like things that cause pain to Texas and their fans. So go Pokes. That game's at 9 tomorrow, 1 o'clock CBS. Number 1 Georgia against number 8 Alabama. Georgia right now a 5-point favorite. This is obviously a big-time game because it's going to have major implications on the college football playoff and the committee and the decisions they have to make. If you need something to flip over to during a commercial of the SEC title game, there'll be another game going at the same time. On ABC, you'll have the AAC championship with SMU and Tulane. And Tulane right now ranked 22nd in the country. On Fox at 5, number 2 Michigan against number 16 Iowa. Wolverines a 22-point favorite. And at 5 o'clock on ABC, the ACC championship, obviously critical. Louisville 10-2 taking on undefeated Florida State. FSU favored by 1. And I think we all know that the Seminoles get the win. They're in. All right. That's going to do it for me. You guys have a great weekend. I will check back in with you on Monday for the Rip City Drive. And don't forget, we're going to have basketball tomorrow. It's going to be the Trailblazers and Jazz. Game day will kick off at 4, tip-off at 6:30. Talk to you on Monday.